His reputation is at stake. Everyone is watching. It is finally time for the truth. We know the Prime Minister personally appointed Peter Mandelson to be our ambassador to the United States. We know that Mandelson had a close relationship with a convicted paedophile. We know that he had concerning links with Russia and China, links that had already raised red flags. We know that the Prime Minister announced the appointment before vetting was complete, an extraordinary and unprecedented step for the role of US ambassador. The Prime Minister says that it was usual for this because it was a political appointment. So I will remind him and the rest of the Labour front bench who are heckling that Peter Mandelson was a politician who had been sacked twice from government for lying. That meant he should have gone through the full security process. And we also know, finally, Mr. Speaker, that when Peter Mandelson failed the security vetting, he was allowed to continue in the role with access to top-secret intelligence and security information. This goes beyond propriety and ethics. This is a matter of national security. On the 26th of January 2022, the Right Honourable Gentleman said to a previous Prime Minister at this dispatch box, if he misled the House, he must resign. Does he stand by those words, or is there one rule for him and another for everyone else?
In relation to the point she makes about what I said in February in answer to a question of hers, I make it very clear, Mr. Speaker, I had not seen the security vetting file. I did not know that UK SV... The question asked me about vetting. I knew about the due diligence, and that's why I put before the House what I knew about the due diligence in relation to Epstein. The question asked me about vetting, and I knew what the due diligence has said, and therefore I told the House what the due diligence has said. I didn't tell them what security vetting had said because I hadn't seen the file in relation to that.
Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The problem the Prime Minister's got is no one believes him. The public don't believe him. The MPs on this side of the House don't believe him. His own gullible backbenchers don't believe him. So does the Prime Minister agree with me? He's been lying.
Prime Minister, sorry, we don't use those words, and I'm sure the members withdrawn it.
Mr. Speaker, I have the greatest respect for you and your office, but I will not withdraw. That man couldn't lie straight in bed.
Order. Mr. Anderson, you'll have to leave.
Mr. Speaker, the UK has some of the highest energy prices in the world. That is crippling our economy, pushing up the cost of living, and leaves us particularly exposed to energy shocks like the one we are experiencing right now. And yet, the government seems totally unwilling to accept the scale of the problem and totally unwilling to shift in their dogmatic commitment to a net zero agenda which is making us poorer. The Right Honourable Lady noted the importance of keeping fuel duty down. But once again, she had nothing to say about the onerous increase in fuel duty she still plans to bring forward in September.
Exactly.
Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have had no meaningful action today on the issue of North Sea oil and gas. The Chancellor says she wants to reduce our exposure to global energy, yet the government is choosing to leave us more resilient on imported hydrocarbons.
The Prime Minister personally decided to appoint a serious, known national security risk to our most sensitive diplomatic post. He mentioned the word process, Mr. Speaker, more than 100 times in Parliament yesterday, but he was the one who didn't follow that process. Yes. This morning, we have heard the bombshell testimony of the former Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office, Sir Ollie Robbins. Sir Ollie Robbins had a long and distinguished career serving ministers. He is not the sort of person to give us a frank personal account of how things played out last January. So when he told us today that Downing Street put the Foreign Office under constant pressure to clear Peter Mandelson, that Number 10 showed a dismissive approach to Mandelson's vetting process, when he told us that it would have been very difficult indeed to deny clearance and that doing so would have damaged US-UK relationships, we know he is giving us the slightest indication of how bad things were.
Does she not believe, however, that the sorry souls opposite us should have to put their money where their mouth is and that there should be a vote of no confidence in this Prime Minister in due course?
The right honourable gentleman makes a very good point. I think he is right, because I don't believe the Prime Minister has the intention of doing the honourable thing himself, even though that's the standard to which he held everyone else. The decision, as I said, about whether he will ultimately take responsibility for his actions is now up to Labour MPs. We heard many powerful statements from that side of the House yesterday. Labour MPs know that the Prime Minister has let the country down, he's let Parliament down, and he's also let the Labour Party down. It is clear to everyone, except the Prime Minister himself, that he has failed on his own terms. It is clear to the public that he is failing at the job. It is clear to civil servants that he is throwing them under the bus. And it is clear to members across this House that he is not fit to lead. This cannot go on. This House deserves better. The country deserves better. The Prime Minister is not fit for office. The first duty, Mr. Speaker, of any Prime Minister is to keep this country safe. This Prime Minister has put the country's national security at risk. He must take responsibility. It is time for him to go.
What I set out to the House on Monday is that Foreign Office officials granted security clearance to Mandelson against the recommendation of UK security vetting. Yesterday, Sir Ollie Robbins was asked if he shared that decision with me, Number 10, or any other ministers. He gave a clear answer: no. Mr. Speaker, that puts to bed all the allegations levelled at me by those opposite in relation to dishonesty. Last week they were all saying that it must have been shared with me. Sir Ollie was very clear yesterday it was not. I believe not sharing it was a serious error of judgment. That information should have been shared with me and other ministers. And if it had have been, Mandelson would not have been committed to post.
He keeps mentioning Sir Ollie Robbins. Sir Ollie Robbins told us that the Prime Minister even sought clearance from His Majesty the King before the vetting. He'd already got agreement from the US administration. The chair of the Select Committee said that. Mandelson was a done deal. Yesterday, Sir Ollie Robbins said that the focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. He said the Prime Minister's team showed a dismissive attitude to vetting. And they even argued Peter Mandelson didn't need any vetting at all. This clearly wasn't proper process. The Prime Minister did not follow the process the Cabinet Secretary set out in November 2024. He knows he did not follow due process, yet he told the House he had. Mr. Speaker, I cannot accuse the Prime Minister of deliberately misleading the House, but everyone can see what has happened here. This was not due process. Everyone knows the price of misleading the House. Will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility and go?
Mr. Speaker, let's be absolutely clear. Before Mandelson took up his post, UKSV recommended with red flags that clearance should be denied, and there was high concern that that was not brought to my attention or the attention of the Foreign Secretary at the time or subsequently is a very serious error of judgment, and anyone in my position would have lost confidence in the former Permanent Secretary. But, Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition claimed on Friday that Mandelson could not have been cleared against security advice. She was wrong about that. She said that ministers must have been told. She was wrong about that. She claimed there was deliberate dishonesty. She was wrong about that. Wrong, wrong, wrong. She rushed to judgment as she always did, just like the Iran war. Mr. Speaker, I was elected by the British people because they let the country down for 14 long years. Whatever she says, whatever noise they make, nothing is going to distract me from delivering for our country.
After weeks of chaos, this may be the lowest point yet for this government. A Prime Minister putting his own interests above the national interest. Absolutely. He has already had 4 Chiefs of Staff, 5 Directors of Communications, 3 Cabinet Secretaries and 4 Principal Private Secretaries. So does the Leader of the House not agree that perhaps the problem lies with the Prime Minister himself? On Tuesday, the Foreign Affairs Committee heard extraordinary evidence from Ollie Robbins, the former Permanent Secretary at the Foreign Office. He described a dismissive attitude in Downing Street towards vetting and constant pressure to appoint Peter Mandelson to the most senior diplomatic role. He also told MPs that he was asked to give the Prime Minister's then Director of Communications a senior diplomatic post without informing the Foreign Secretary, it would seem. Mr Speaker, the Foreign Office is not a redeployment pool for failed political advisers. So can the Leader of the House tell us, was it appropriate for Number 10 to apply such pressure over Mandelson's vetting, or does he accept that due process was not followed? Does he believe the Prime Minister inadvertently misled this House? Does the Leader accept the Prime Minister continues to make statements that are hard to reconcile with reality? Can the Leader explain why Ollie Robbins was sacked? And was it right and fair to sack Ollie Robbins? Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister has never looked weaker. The Prime Minister is so weak that he's brought forward the moment of prorogation to avoid another bruising Prime Minister's questions. He's also lost the confidence of the entire country. So when will Labour MPs finally stand up for their constituents and join us in removing this dreadful Prime Minister? While the Prime Minister is consumed by internal chaos, the issues that matter to our constituents are being ignored. Energy bills are soaring, particularly for those in rural communities relying on heating oil. People are struggling to find work. Decisions on funding our national defence are being delayed despite global threats. At the same time, government backbenchers and cabinet members brief against each other, plotting over the Prime Minister's future. As this parliamentary session draws to a close, I doubt it will be remembered fondly by those on the government benches.
The attacks on our Jewish community have become a national emergency. In recent weeks, we've seen multiple attacks against cultural sites and synagogues. The Jewish community has been targeted again and again. As a result, many Jewish people are now tragically considering leaving the UK. When the Shadow Home Secretary visited the community in Golders Green just after the attack on the Atzola ambulances, he was told they feel abandoned by the government. How much more Iranian action on our UK soil is needed before the government acts to prescribe the IRGC? In opposition, the Labour Party, including the then Shadow Home Secretary, now the Foreign Secretary, said they would do this. But almost 2 years after winning power, they've done nothing.
It is abhorrent that members of our Jewish community are considering that their long-term future in the United Kingdom. And collectively, I'm sure that we want to assure them that we will do everything that we possibly can to make sure that the United Kingdom is a safe place for them and their families. But I do recognise the fear and the distress that they are feeling at the moment. And that is why we're making sure that our response is proportionate and urgent in the way that I set out earlier in my remarks.